Good afternoon, everyone. We're really excited to have you all here today. Welcome to our video session. We're excited to hear from our speaker. I'm really excited to hear from him. So I am Bora Lachi, and I'm the project manager at Impactionable. Our mission at Impactionable is to create a community that values meaningful relationships and acts on the desire to make the world a better place. The purpose of our video sessions are to hear from social entrepreneurs and leaders in this space to speak to our community members, and is a way for us to hear ideas and solve challenges for real-world social entrepreneurs around the world. We're always looking to grow and learn more. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Roger Mader. He is a co-founder and managing partner of Ampersand. Roger built Ampersand as a partnership of peer practitioners to employ the methods of design and anthropology to craft better offerings, experiences, and enterprises. Today, he will explain the behavioral science for a pitch perfect by putting the problem first, the solution second, to build an investment proposition. So Roger, I'll send it over to you.
It's very kind of you. And even now I know who you are. Good to see you. Thank you for putting whatever that weird name was in the background. And thank you all for making time. I'm in New York. I suspect by the diversity of names and faces that we may be in more than a few time zones, so I'm going to go at pace. We've got an hour together. I'm going to try and I've got a presentation that can last about 3 days. I'm going to do about 30 minutes, kind of fast, so that we have time to talk about it. So we're going to talk about the perfect pitch today, and in particular, what I want you to do is know that it's not about selling, it's about being compelling. And I'm very grateful to Bora and Shivani for inviting me and providing the introduction. Let me just say that Ampersand is a human-centered design firm. I help large companies act small and small companies get big, and I tend to work with large, familiar big companies, and I also help startups. You'll recognize some of these. There's also a few startups in that grouping that would be unfamiliar to you. I also teach, I'm occasionally an executive for companies who retain me to assist. For example, most recently, I was the chief marketing officer for Subway, the sandwich group, if you're familiar with them, to help do a bit of a turnaround there. And I teach at the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan. That's kind of I've been doing that for over a decade. And I've also been the chair of design thinking for Rutgers University, the red one, for digital marketing with University of South Florida. That's what the torus or bowl shape is. And I do guest lecturing at a number of other universities. And I think of it as teaching business to designers and design to businessers, and that they each have something to learn from one another's capabilities. And what I find is that our work poses a really rudimentary question about how we solve critical problems in the marketplace. And one of the things that's become apparent to me is that we are really a primitive species. We really have not evolved at the pace of our social structure, which has aggregated lots of us together in close proximity in cities. Cities can be in close proximity to other cities, and yet we still operate as a very selfish animal. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was necessary for us to still be on the planet, that we had been selfish for the 300,000 years during which we had to compete for every morsel of food, and that whoever was on the other side of the hill could be as likely to kill you as to marry you. So it would make sense that you would be tribal and selfish. Unfortunately, we've evolved, fortunately, we've evolved beyond that. And it creates a real problem when you wake up in the morning and you think about yourself first rather than others. It wasn't until I had children that I woke up in the morning and thought, is someone else hungry rather than am I hungry, just as a natural act. But honestly, we all walk around all the time thinking of ourselves as though we are the hero of our own drama and the center of the universe. And it's a very self-centered worldview that's helpful when you really have only yourself to command on the stage of life. So it's not surprising that it happens, but it becomes a problem when you're trying to be an entrepreneur or engage in new ventures, because you need to invert this. You need to think about your customer first. You need to think about the other first, and then determine how it's relevant to me. How can I be helpful to you is an inverse thought than one you naturally would be inclined to, or at least that I would. You might be a much better person than I am. But much of humanity scales this up into a company structure as well. So if you gather a bunch of people together who make their living constructing hammers, they think about hammers all the time and how am I going to sell hammers to customers? They too have to invert this and have to say, hey, I wonder what my customers are trying to accomplish in the complex context of their lives, and they're trying to attach lumber to metal, and is a hammer the best way to do that? Maybe we should be coming up with another tool set. If you don't ask about your customers' needs, if you're only thinking about how to refine hammers, you're going to die a hammer maker and miss the boat on all the other things you could be doing. In business, we're taught about supply and demand. It's the exact same thing. We obsess, even in business, about the supply side. What do I make versus what do people demand? And we've got to invert that too. So I would submit as a lesson to you, one of the critical lessons of today is that much as architects learn that form follows function, as business students learn that structure follows strategy, I want you to know that supply follows demand. It's not supply and demand. We are in the business of figuring out demand and providing supply. If you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, you're always starting with an attempt to understand demand. The other way to think of that is the problem to be solved. I'm in the business of making a decision, but it's going to be a wasted investment if I don't fully dimensionalize the problem and understand it from the perspective of my customer. And so when I think about pitching a solution, it's going to be based on having done the kind of research that's customer-centered so that I can tell a story from that perspective. And so your perfect pitch involves 8 steps if you follow my proposed method. It is to define the problem, to understand or describe its underlying cause, and describe the impact that it has. How big is this problem? Now you introduce the solution, and only then. If I don't understand the problem first, your solution is meaningless. So help me understand the problem, then tell me the solution, prove to me why I should believe you that your solution would work. Then demonstrate how it would work. What's the minimum viable product required? What action are you asking me to take as the listener that you've just invested this time and energy in educating? And then a summary that simply covers the main points. This is the natural path of great storytelling, of most mythology. It is the way that you can imagine our forebears told stories of legend around a fire. It is the way that we tell stories in a story arc that says there's a problem that our hero has to overcome. And that is the story that you're going to tell. It requires that you use the same kind of diagnosis to construct your solution as well. So I'm going to take you through an example of solving a problem and then show you the pitch that brought it to life, that funded it. I'm going to start first. Oh, sorry. There's another way to summarize what we're doing here. The problem is, what is the problem? Why is it happening? How much does it matter? What might we do to solve it? How do we know that it's going to work? How much is it going to take to make it come to life? What actions are required to do so? And what do you need us to do now? There's a complex piece of technology here. There's 2, actually. One of them is a premature infant. The other one is the incubator that surrounds it. This is the incubator that you would find in any developing country's maternity ward in order to take care of a baby that's born prematurely or with any kind of complex conditions so that they can monitor that child, so that they can control its environment. Often they're trying to mimic the controlled environment of the womb with a child whose organs haven't fully developed yet. And it's a very sophisticated piece of technology. Costs $30,000 to $40,000 today in order to equip a hospital with one of these. And if you looked at the features that matter to the user of this equipment, you could map them across the bottom of this grid and say, what's the cost to use it? How easily accessible is it? Mobile, easy to use? Does it require power, or how much power does it require? And does it provide the monitoring that I need of a child? And if you mapped this incubator on it, you'd say it costs a lot on one end and it does a lot on the other end. And it's kind of a fixed, heavy equipment structure that's not particularly mobile. It's not really accessible to you and me. It's really designed for medical professionals to use. Therefore, it's not easy to use. You have to be trained in how to use it, how to read the monitors, etc. When you send this incubator to Haiti, for example, or any other war-torn place or one that has been devastated by natural catastrophe, you'll find that very quickly your incubator looks like this. It has been basically turned into a filing cabinet. If you ponder why that might happen, let me ask that of the group. Who can suggest to me why a $40,000 incubator sits in disrepair in this setting? Let's assume this one's 80. I can't see you all, so I'm going to call on you if I don't see a hand. Okay. Tendakai, how are you, sir? Why is this thing not in operation?
I would like to answer the question.
Okay, maybe it's because there is no electricity, and maybe in that place of area.
That is very, that could be it for sure. William, what were you going to say?
Okay, I would say this could be maybe they don't have the infrastructure and the funding to continue to manage this this device, like to continually manage it and yes, manage it.
Correct, William. William's answer is the more correct one because that's what happens more often. A power outage will cause this, but the power might come back up. The real problem is after a part becomes flawed, they can't afford to maintain it. They don't have the training to maintain it. They've been trained in how to use it, but they don't have the supply chain, the infrastructure, as William described it, in order to be able to maintain it. And so very quickly, this really important device is no longer functional because it's been actually donated without the proper supply chain or without judging the infrastructure. And what you get instead when the UN shows up to try with UN forces to try and support Haiti after the recent hurricane a few years ago, this is what you get as an incubator, a cardboard box with aluminum foil, because largely what you're trying to do with a premature baby is keep its body warm. It doesn't have enough body fat in order to maintain its a safe body temperature. Now, let me show you a different way that somebody chose to solve this problem. There's a competition. And these guys took a supply side view. They said, well, in these, to solve William's problem of insufficient infrastructure, what if we looked at other technologies that they do repair on a regular basis? And how do they do that? And how could we mimic that? And what they found was, this happens to be a photograph out of Cuba, but the notion is the ability to maintain automobiles. They found that they could do that. And in Haiti, and in many developing countries, the most prominent vehicle, and the one that's maintained the best, is the Toyota 4Runner. It's everywhere. So a team of designers deconstructed Toyota 4Runner and said, how can we make an incubator out of these components, which we know they can get? And they put together a working prototype that used a car battery power, an air filter for obviously air filtration, a couple of switches that you get at a hardware store, kind of available anywhere, and built what they called the NeoNurture, the car parts incubator. And this thing won a big design award in 2010. And if you tried to compare it on the same grid as you would the hospital incubator, you'll see the NeoNurture costs less, it's more accessible and mobile, it's easier to use, it does require power, but it's more self-powered and rechargeable. But it provides much less monitoring. It's mostly controlling temperature, but it's not going to tell you if the baby's heart is palpitating or if there's a blood pressure issue or any other factor that could be life-threatening. So it's a much simpler device. Still insufficient in the case study that we're going to look at, which is when you look in a rural setting. This happens to be rural southern India, where incubators fall into disrepair, or incubators are too far away to use. In fact, when you study the situation that a pregnant woman has, she might face a 3-hour train ride to a medical clinic that has an incubator kind of facility, or even medical support of any kind. And so what you find in this setting is, more often than not, women give birth in the way that they've been giving birth for hundreds of years, with the equivalent of a doula or just some wiser, older party to attend to them from the local community, but without any formal medical help. And therefore, if there's any complexity for the child or a premature birth in particular, they're really at risk. I would like to, having kind of set up the problem for you in a couple of different ways that others have solved it, I would like to introduce you to one of my favorite pitch presentations done by a young entrepreneur and her student team out of the Stanford D School at the time. Her name is Jane Chen, and if you Google her and do or check TED Talks, you'll see a number of different presentations, because this pitch was so powerful that she managed to address this issue and make a big difference in the world. Here's Jane. I want you to listen carefully to her. I'll provide you the link. You can go listen to this anytime you want. But she, in under 4 minutes, delivers about as effective a pitch as you could hope for a new venture. Okay. First of all, I hope you felt that that was an effective pitch. Again, that was Jane Chen, speaking of the embrace. Let's walk through the key components of her presentation. She starts by asking you to hold out your hands, close your eyes, and hold a life. This is something deeply visceral, emotionally, that can connect the audience to this problem. And she did a brilliant job of depicting it in a way that you could connect to your heart. And she said in a statement that every year, 4 million premature infants die unnecessarily in the first weeks of life. That is a problem worth paying attention to. Why? Because mothers in the developing world don't have access to medical care or equipment they need to regulate body temperature. And how damaging is this? I mean, it becomes a vicious cycle. Not only are we talking about the death of 4 million babies, we're talking about the mortality rates resulting in people having more babies and straining families and resources further, which has all kinds of complicating follow-on effects. Now you understand the problem, its cause, and its impact. The solution is the embrace. She held up what looked like a little sleeping bag and just told us this is the answer: a low-cost, low-tech personal incubator. She walked us through the proof points that would give us confidence that this thing would work. She described its function. She described that it solves the problem of accessibility, and she described it as ultra low cost, this proven low production cost of $25, and used the emphasis of 0.1% of the cost of an alternative incubator. So what does this require? Our team is building a proof of concept to test in India this summer. We're going to produce our first run of 1,000 to distribute to mothers by September. In order to invest, here is the website. You'll see the donate button at top right. For $25, you can provide an incubator to a family and community. You can save lives. We welcome donations of any size. This is what you would see on the website. And then lastly, together, we're going to save 1 million babies next year. Donate now to support the embrace. Now, some of the summary stuff that I gave you was actually from pitch presentation, but I thought that the TED presentation was more powerful right up until the end, when she wasn't really asking people for money in this or investors for money, but she did make the case for it. So remember our 8 steps. Another way to think of them is as follows for your own presentation, just to genericize it for you. There is a problem in the world. Now, it might be very specific to your world, but it needs to be the world of your audience. Why would they care? If it's purely financial, there's a big problem in the world. If you're Airbnb, there's a big problem that people are spending too much for hotels that are difficult to get to and to check in, and lots of other challenges, and basically anesthetize them from the city around them. And that creates a huge opportunity. So when it's a financial play that you're going for, I'm going to make you rich by investing in this. You're pivoting it around the potential return. However, it's much more powerful to connect Airbnb to people when you talk to them about their own experience of staying in a hotel and what's so frustrating about it. And why is it I can check into an airplane with my phone, but in a hotel, I got to go stand in a line. Everything about it is frustrating. What if we created a digital template for the future and created the world's biggest hotel without owning any hotels? Imagine the profits. For the cause, you need to say why this problem is happening. There's a problem in the world because of blank. Explain it concisely, viscerally. Help them understand. We saw that Savita couldn't get her baby to a medical facility 4 hours away, and that baby died. This is I believe that that cause is significant enough to cost a human life. So describe how it hurts, the pain that the users feel, and the secondary impacts, like we did with the secondary impacts on population growth. Now it's time to introduce your solution. What is the answer? Introducing blank and your vision for whatever attributes it is bringing. Is it better? Is it faster? Is it cheaper than the alternative? Your proof can be a demonstration. It can be that you've entered into a relationship versus competition. The market size could be a proof point as well if you're about scale. But most importantly, you're saying that we fill a real gap in the marketplace and do it in a way that's very credible. And here's what we're going to need to make it happen. We need, and typical of any venture, essentially what you're funding is the team itself, the underlying technology build, testing, and scaling. So what action are we asking them to take? We need initial funding to prove our minimum viable product, to build our team, to test, and to refine. It's going to be this much money in this period of time. And in summary, the problem is the unnecessary death of premature babies. The solution is the embrace. It creates a better world by saving up to 1 million babies in the next 5 years. Here's how you can help. That is the approach in 8 steps. What questions do you have about that? And are we on time? A half an hour on the nose. I have other examples if we need to elaborate further, but far better to spend our time in conversation if you don't mind. I'm going to stop sharing so we can see each other's faces first. I'll reshare if you need me to show you something.
Roger, I've already actually seen this one. Remember where I worked?
No, where were you?
Z schools.
I
worked
right.
with law.
You saw this did you see it at Rutgers?
Let's just say I saw I have the presentation still on my computer.
I see. Good. I'm glad you're familiar.
I like it though. Yes. But in fact, that name you saw is actually the name of my company.
Ah, thank you.
And I'll explain that later with you later, another time. But okay, so I've been learning about this. It's kind of hard. I'll wait for some people to talk about it because I need to really get it in my head. But sure. I know you're a good teacher. So that's why I
Thank
came.
You. It's kind of.
Thank you. Everybody has to unmute.
If anyone has any questions, unmute yourself. I have a question, Roger. What is the biggest mistake you've seen entrepreneurs do when they're pitching?
They start with their solution. It's the most fundamental error.
Okay.
So, hey, I've got a thing. And I'm excited about it. I hope you will be too. No, you haven't given me any friggin' reason to be excited about this. I don't even know what problem you're solving. This is, by the way, how most commercials work, right? Or at least did historically. Look, I've got a new can opener. It presumes that you have nailed down for your customer that they have a problem with can openers today. But they may not. And it's really helpful if you show people cutting their fingers off opening a can first, or struggling, or people with arthritis having a difficult time. So you should, I think, always start by grounding everybody on a common understanding of a problem that matters. So it's worth their time to even hear you out.
Love that. I mean, this is the first time I've seen the impact in a pitch, which is so great because I've never seen that before. I've never seen anyone even mention impact. Is that has that changed throughout, or is this something? I just want to know, when did the impact happen?
This is what you're seeing now is a function of the emergence of venture capital. And Tendakai, if I apologize if I mispronounced your name, I just saw in the chat that he asked if I can share the presentation. I can, and I assume that the recording will be shared to the group as well, so we'll have the context.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Or Ava can send you an old version.
I'm not sending that because I'll talk to you later about that.
Okay, good. Good, don't. What happened with the emergence of venture capital funding startups, you have to remember that before that time, the way that businesses got underway was either through revenue, like starting small and earning money and slowly, incrementally making their way there, or through some other kind of financial resource, funded by a company, funded by a bank. That meant typically that you had to keep your ambitions relatively small because you had to pay back debt along the way. Very different from Jeff Bezos basically getting funding and not promising a profit for a decade. I mean, literally ran at a loss, but for a reason about which he was very articulate. My job is to own the market. We all get rich if this thing scales. And now people go to me to buy everything. And to do that, I got to get to market fast in multiple categories. In order to do that, I got to go fast and I'm got to go cheap. And profit cannot be the element or we'll never get there. And he had enough, because venture capital existed, he had enough support to go about doing it. Because of venture capital, what you ended up with were a room of investors for early stage ventures, just a concept, a twinkle in the eye, who were all smart and were betting their own money and rapidly iterated lessons, kind of like we're doing today, around how to do this better. So very quickly, it became evident that if you want to win my money, you better be clear about what the problem is so that I can bother, you've got like 5 minutes. That's all I'm giving you. So it better matter. And that's how this process evolved. Tendakai, yes, sir, I see your hand. Thank you for being so polite.
Yes, my question is goes to understanding the end user, because I think this is where you interact with a lot of people trying to come up with a solution. So, but how do you know that really, this is where I end, like from collecting all the information and this is where I start? Because if you do that, sometimes people will tell you different like solutions, what this thing should be like, so how do you really like say, you know what, I've gathered information, enough information, and this is what I need to start working on a solution.
The way to do it is to go to medical school. And the reason I say that is because to do this well, I want you to be a good doctor. And because we've all had good and maybe bad doctors, you know that a good doctor, one that you really trust, cares more about you than they do about themselves, about making money on the conversation you're having. And the first thing they do is ask where it hurts. And then they start testing. They start thumping your chest and banging on your knees in order to find evidence of the underlying cause. The best doctors listen to you to understand where it hurts as a direction to help them interrogate cause. Bad doctors just prescribe whatever the patient asks for. And you ask Elvis Presley or Michael Jackson or Prince, what happens when people just prescribe whatever you ask for? It doesn't go well. So your job is to be a good doctor. And in doing so, and Tendakai, what I want you to do when you're doing a pitch is prove to them that you're a good doctor. I have spoken to the patient. I have diagnosed their pain. I have found this underlying cause, and I'm going to prescribe this solution. It's the exact same process. And the way that and what that gives you, let me just describe the process. When you're doing the research, you need to explore the lives of the humans that your solution serves in context. Because if you ask people, they will lie to you. They won't mean to. A focus group is a terrible way to get information about human beings, because people are worried about looking impressive and impressing each other and trying to sound smart. And a focus group is a great method to have people evaluate something once it exists. It's a terrible method to generate the input to create that idea. The input you need to create the idea, to know that it works, to understand that you're serving real pain, is to go out in the field like an anthropologist and study human beings like great apes. And observe them from afar, observe them from up close, ask them what they're doing, and find out the problems they're having and how they're going about solving. And oftentimes people won't be good at explaining this. You'll find the classic example is people standing in line, and you ask them what's bothering them, and it's, well, we should have more tellers at the bank, or we should have more access points at the movie theater, or whatever they're waiting for. In the US, the Department of Motor Vehicles is the typical culprit of making you stand in line. What they don't say is, lines are the problem. If there's a line, there's inherently a broken system, because you're serving me horribly if you're charging me with my time, my most valuable asset. So you have to observe them waiting in line and define it as a problem, because if you interview them, they might not say, oh, I hate standing in line. They might give you solutions for how to make the line faster, rather than we need to eliminate lines. This was a study that we did back in 100 years ago. And I will tell you that when I was waiting in line personally at a bank, and I was interviewed on the subject, I said, why are there empty teller windows? This was at a time when you literally had to go at your lunch break to get your own cash out of your own bank, because people used cash back then. It was this green stuff that you used to transact exchange. If you asked me to solve it, I'd say, put more people in the windows, open for longer hours during the day, occasionally open on a freaking weekend. I'd probably get furious halfway through this. But I'll tell you what I wouldn't have done is say, why don't you invent a robot that sits in a vestibule and spits cash out, if I touch it with my thumb? I should not be designing the solution. I should just be telling you, I hate wasting my time. I hate organizing my day around the bank rather than the bank organizing its day around me. So your job is to go out and understand their pain. Don't ask them how to solve it, any more than you would ask Michael Jackson how to solve his pain and let him prescribe his own drugs. It's not a good solution. They didn't go to medical school. You did. You're the doctor. You figure out the solution. You just diagnose the pain and the cause. When you've done that to Nakai and you're standing in front of investors, you will for sure run across someone, they're typically older, whiter, and more male, who will say, tut, 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 that's not, the problem is blah. And I've been the old white guy expert, or presumed expert. And generally what you find is those people are quoting a fact from 30 years ago, the way that they observed the market, because when they were in the field themselves. So you really need to say, in fact, that's not the case. Let me tell you what it's really like. Just like we watched in this video when we saw the life of a child lost because of this problem. If you come through with that case example, no one can argue with your authority. You know your shit. So it's really about going and getting your hands real dirty with your target customers to understand what's their pain, what's causing it, so that when you write a prescription for them, we can have faith in it. Because we're investing in your prescription. Good question.
Thank you, Roger. That was a great question. I know that, as a part of this video session, we have this video session is a part of the social innovation competition that's going on for Impactionable. And we have a couple of our finalists that are on this call. So for the finalists that are looking to prepare their pitches for the final event next week, do you have any questions about your particular pitches specifically? We have someone who has so much experience with not only pitching, but selling and marketing. And there's a true, visionary here. So please, if you need any help with preparation, please do share with them.
Could you name for us those two humans?
There's 5 humans, actually.
Oh my God, you 5 humans.
So I believe we have someone from Deftronics here. We have someone from Valley B. We have someone from, hold on, let me just bring up the list really quickly. Bora, if you want to help me out with this.
Yes, we have someone from Project Go, Botanica, and Ina Light.
Yes. So we have 5 visionaries here who can meet with another visionary. So finalists, please go ahead, raise your hands, unmute. This is the time for you. And not all at once.
Seneca, if I'm butchering your name, I'm sorry. I see your hand is up, but I think it was from before.
It was from before. Let me just put it down.
Figure out how to put it down. I can't figure it out either.
Okay, I've lowered my hand.
Well done.
All right.
Okay, how do I pronounce Sizwe Mavuso? You're on mute, but it looked like it worked.
That's very impressive. That's more or less, yeah, how you pronounce it. Sizwe Mavuso.
Sizwe Mavuso. Nice to meet you, Sizwe.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Roger.
Are you going to be doing a pitch for a social impact venture, my friend?
Yes, I am.
Have you done it yet? Have you practiced it? Have you done it in the mirror? Have you seen it with someone critiquing you?
Yes, I have done quite a few pitches, and I've done them quite well. But I must say, I'm thoroughly impressed with what you presented. I felt kind of emotional with that that example of a pitch that you put, and I think I'm going to pick up some pointers from there and just incorporate that on my pitch as well. I'm pitching to a water research committee on Friday, this coming Friday, so this is definitely useful.
Okay, good luck.
So thank you so much for that, guys. Thank you.
Yes, you bet. We need you to succeed. Let me just share this again in case it helps to trigger any questions. I'm curious, Sizwe, if there were any of these stages of the pitch process that you were thinking you might add or change based on what you heard today.
So I think the most important thing is the impact. And that I need to focus on personally in my pitch. And the problem, I get into the problem, but it's just very specific to why I conceptualize my product. But it would be, I'd like to add on to it in terms of the problem in terms of that region that I work in, and expand it to South Africa and possibly expand it to the whole world. And where is it going in terms of the challenges that we have with water? So that's one thing that I'm going to work on. And impact, that's extremely important. So I'm going to work on that, try and improve that. And most importantly, is the summary and the closing. So those are the two things that I'd like to really improve on.
Sizwe, in the example, and it evokes emotion in me too. I mean, it's human life, so is access to potable water. So it can trigger just as much emotional resonance for people. I think it's instructive for me that she described 2 elements of this. One was we can save lives, and the other one was this longer term impact if we could reduce the burden on families of reducing the necessary number of children that families will have because they have to presume that they're going to lose some in the process. So you can reduce family size over time. In much the same way, I can imagine when you describe impact, you should know that the North America was just revealed by scientists that we have suffered the worst drought in 1,200 years. Which is, I mean, there was no formal record keeping in that time period. So that's just based on the geologic indications. So this is a problem of, this was originally a problem of the developing world. It is a problem of the world now. So you're going to be able to garner interest and money from people who are, as far away as, as Israel, for example, who've been working on desalination technologies for a long time to address this issue. But you're going to get input from South Dakota too. So what I want you to be able to do is say, this is a problem that I have observed here, but we are now seeing it here. And this becomes a global problem in the next 7 years or whatever your research credibly tells you. So that what we solve for today at the extreme edge of need becomes a solution for the world in due course. And we need to solve it here now in order to be ready to solve it for the rest of the world.
Yeah.
That's all.
Thank you so much.
That's based on the assumption that it's true, by the way. Like, you'd need research to say that there is validity in that statement, but for sure there's many more regions of the world that will benefit from water solutions.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for that contribution.
You're very welcome. Thank you for yours. Others?
William, do you want to share yours?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, William, we can. You sound good.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I specifically do not have a question right now, but I really want to thank the whole team for setting this up. And I actually learned a lot from Mr. Roger Mada. I don't know if I pronounced the name correctly.
Very close, Roger.
Okay, Roger, sorry, sir.
Thank you.
I learned quite a lot, and I also learned that we should bring our we should see the questions before offering solutions to them in our pitch. So I think I got something very key from that. Thank you very much, sir, and the whole, yes.
Roger, can you elaborate on the issue of where you say supply follows demand? Can you give examples on that one?
Yes. All I mean is that demand is what customers want. Supply is what you're making. Before we talk about what you're making, can we talk about what they need? It is literally just the preview. Rather than talking about me, look at me, I've got this product. Instead, hey, look at these people who are suffering. And it matters for these reasons. Now I can tell you about how I'm going to supply the answer. So your supply follows demand in exactly the same way that this presentation says, let's talk about what the demand is in orange on the left, before we talk about the supply that we're going to bring to it, the answer, the solution on the right in black. More explicit.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
I understood.
The black is supply, the orange is demand.
Fantastic. Does anyone have any more questions for Roger?
I just have a final question with in terms of what we have to present at the end. I don't know if I'm mistaken this, but you guys are going to send us a template of that we have to fill in on is it a PowerPoint or something? Can we just, could you kindly just elaborate on that, anyone?
Yes, Bora, you want to cover that?
Yes. So you should have gotten an email of kind of like a draft of a pitch deck that we've created. Yes. And this should just be PDF, so you can copy it and make it your own on your PowerPoint, the layout, but that's just kind of also what Roger sent over, what he just spoke today. I think it's mixing those, what we sent and what he said, and then you can create that your own, but following those guidelines.
Okay, so that's, so we don't have to use your, basically the
template, no.
So we just have to follow the format.
Yes.
So correct. You guys can compare apples to apples, basically.
Yes, that is correct. Yes.
Okay, cool.
And then one thing to remember is to record your presentation and send that to us before, just in case, you know, if there's anything that goes wrong with tech. So you can be there to answer questions from the judges, but you can play your presentation just in case something would happen. We've had that happen before in the past. But basically, it would be a very simple video of you sharing your screen, recording your screen, and just walking through your pitch in the 5 minutes, just like it would with the live competition. If you send that to us before, we can play that in case there's something that goes wrong. So yeah, that's just another reminder. And we'll walk through all of this later, as well as when the competition goes live. And we'll walk through the tech during the rehearsal part before the competition too. But this is just a way to, plan ahead for the next week.
Thank you all. Please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn to connect if that's helpful to you, and we'll certainly accept it. And I will, I'm going to provide Shivani and Bora with a copy of the presentation as a PDF that they can share with you.
Thank you so much, Roger. That was amazing. I know, I know I've learned a lot. I hope everyone else has as well. I will give it to Bora to close us all out.
I wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Roger. This was great. It was a pleasure meeting you, and this was kind of our favorite video session. So it's always great to hear from other entrepreneurs. So thank you so much. And for the finalists, we look forward to seeing you all next week. Roger, if you're available, I will definitely send you the link so you can hear everyone's pitches. Perfect.
Love to.
Wonderful. And then we're just gonna wrap up. Thank you, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you all next week. And if you have any questions, please let us know.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.